Greetings. Our readings today are Genesis chapters 30 and 31. More children are born. We read about a conflict between Jacob and his greedy father-in-law Laban. I want to lift up a couple things that I read from Martin Luther's commentary in these chapters. Luther critiques an allegory in his time period that Rachel represents monastic life and Leah domestic. To appreciate his critique, we need to remember that to live a holy life in his day, one needed to be a monk, a priest, or a nun. And that being married, having children, that was domestic living, and that wasn't seen as holy. Well, Luther does something radical. He rejects this concept. So when they say that the life of the monks were called the beautiful and beloved Rachel, but domestic and political activity was compared to ugly Leah, Luther would have none of it. He, in fact, believes that Rachel and Leah serve as examples, useful and necessary examples for the church, because of their desire to want a family, to build a family, to raise a family, that it gives evidence that God presides over, governs, and protects the domestic kind of life. And he rejects those who elevate celibate monastic life to the point of disparaging those with families or having contempt for marriage. Now, this doesn't mean that a celibate or single life is unholy. What Luther is really getting at here is that all our lives, whether we take the path of a vocation in the church or we live out our priesthood through baptism and another vocation in this world, that all our lives offer in daily work a holy living. And we have the opportunity to be part of that. Later on in Genesis chapter 30, we get the birth of Joseph. Now, up to this point, Rachel has been barren. Luther reflects on that burden for her. She would have seen her own sister honored with the glory of motherhood. And he believes that Rachel would have been consumed with grief to the extent that she could have easily banished joy from her heart. He also writes that laughter or jests gave her no pleasure, but she spent her days and nights in perpetual sighing, sobbings, tears, complaints, and prayer. You may recall how earlier in Genesis, God remembered Noah. And when we read that, what that really means is that Noah felt that he was forgotten by God. Today we read that God remembers Rachel, which means Rachel felt forgotten by God. I believe this is a testament to the reality, whether in biblical times, or as Luther's reflecting in medieval times, or as I'm reflecting here in modern times, that infertility can be a very painful journey for people. For those with faith who long to have children, it can feel as if God has forgotten them. So as the church, we're called to pray for those who are going through such anguish in their lives, that they would know that God has not forgotten them, and that the joy of the Lord would be poured into their hearts. So today, we see a God who's very much engaged in us personally in our daily life. Reflecting back on how domestic life is holy life, that it's not just at the mission trip, the soup kitchen, the food pantry, the produce distribution, Sunday mornings, the special church project, that you're doing holy work. You're doing holy work when you go to work. You're doing holy work when you care for your children, your spouse, your parents, your neighbor. God is present and blesses our daily work, and we pray that other people would see God through our engagement in our daily work. As mundane as it might seem at times, God's there. But we also read today and reflect and ponder how God is also present in our anguish and in our suffering. Those are my thoughts for today. Take care and God bless.